When it comes to movie box office, Harold Lloyd was big man on campus. Harold sold more tickets during the 1920s than any other comedian and was a top-earning movie star for years. The Freshman was Lloyd's biggest hit and the second most successful comedy of the entire silent film era. Harold epitomized the Roaring Twenties. He was fun, optimistic, and his boundless enthusiasm reflected the nation's self-image. College enrollment soared after World War I, nearly doubling during the 1920s, while a new style of red-blooded sports journalism and the advent of radio and live game broadcasts turned college football into a national obsession. Lloyd knew what audiences wanted. With his winning personality, leading man looks, and team of clever gag writers, he was the perfect comedy star to bring the college craze to the big screen. Lloyd announced in March 1925 that his new football movie would be entitled Rah, Rah, Rah. That name turned out to be taken, however, and by July he wisely renamed it The Freshman. It was his final movie released by Pathé before Lloyd moved to Paramount. The movie premiered August 27 at Sid Grauman's $1 Million Theater, still standing in downtown Los Angeles, where it was an immediate hit, becoming the third biggest release of 1925. Let's look now at how Harold created The Freshman. To begin, Los Angeles County is so large and varied that Lloyd rarely traveled anywhere else to shoot. Yet in November 1924, Lloyd and his crew did something unusual. They busted free from Hollywood and traveled to a remote location, Ontario, California, a small farming town in San Bernardino County. The press incorrectly reported that Lloyd was in town to film a hair-raising railroad sequence. In fact, he was there to film his character arriving at Tate College beside the Ontario Southern Pacific Depot. The side of the former Ontario City Hall appears behind Harold. It once stood on the corner of Euclid and Emporia, due west of the train station. A Civil War-era cannon stood sentry on the front corner. This view looks north toward City Hall at the corner of Euclid and Emporia. Here the dean stands across from City Hall as we look east towards the station. A small Chamber of Commerce building once stood in the middle of Euclid Avenue across from City Hall. You can see the Chamber building and the cannon looking west through the trees. The Ontario Southern Pacific Station, now lost to history, appears here briefly behind the dean. The script originally called for Harold's character to meet leading lady Jobina Ralston while fixing a car. The photo was taken beside the station and shows that Jobina had traveled to Ontario for the opening scenes. Lloyd previewed his movies extensively, adding and cutting scenes until the mix was just right. It's clear that he cut the auto repair scene so he could meet Jobina on the train instead before arriving in town. Jobina's train costume is clearly different than her auto repair costume. Jobina played Lloyd's leading lady in 6 feature comedies. The Freshman was her 4th. Harold did not cast her as a flapper co-ed, but as a demure ingenue, forbidding her by contract from cutting her lengthy curls. For some reason, her costume here is the same as in the auto repair photo. Other sequences failed to make it into the final cut. These early scenes staged in Harold's home bedroom do not appear in the movie. Likewise, this fire escape scene was deleted. Returning to the story, Lloyd decided they needed reaction shots of the angry dean, but rather than head back out to Ontario just for a few pickup shots, they filmed the dean instead beside the Pacific Electric Station in nearby Culver City. The Tate Auditorium was a set built at the Lloyd Studio in Hollywood. The set was designed with almost no room to spare. If the movie camera had moved just a little during filming, it would have revealed the edges of the set. Here's a reverse view of the auditorium set. The auditorium scene continues at Exposition Park in Los Angeles, where Lloyd filmed the Tate College campus scenes. The USC campus was still rather small at the time, and the UCLA campus in Westwood would not be established for another 5 years. So Lloyd filmed at the park instead, even though USC was just across the street. A hungry crowd joins Harold for ice cream as they walk along the former State Exposition Building, due south of the sunken Rose Garden at Exposition Park. It turns out Buster Keaton would film a scene from his later 1927 campus comedy College at the same corner. The ice cream crowd continues along the west side of the Rose Garden towards the steps of the Los Angeles County Natural History Museum. This landmark building remains a very popular filming location. Just north of the Rose Garden, busy University Avenue diagonally bisected the USC campus. It was here that Lloyd filmed the overcrowded trolley scenes from Safety Last. As Harold scrambles to catch a ride, the USC Bovard Administration Building appears as the large tower up the street. This reverse view from Safety Last looks back towards the dome of the Natural History Museum. Further up the street stands the former Old College building that overlooked Bovard Field, where the football practice scenes from the freshmen were filmed. The Old College building tower appears here behind the coach, played by Pat Harmon. The USC football team originally played home games at Bovard Field, equipped with wooden bleachers that seated only a few thousand people. Outmanned during the early years, the press dubbed the USC team the Trojans for fighting on despite overwhelming odds against better-equipped opponents. But starting in 1919, head coach Elmer Henderson, USC's most winning coach, would forge the Trojans into a national powerhouse. Lloyd hired Henderson early on as a consultant for the film. Despite his smile here, reporters nicknamed Henderson Gloomy Gus after a popular comic strip character because he always downplayed his team's chances for success. In 1923, USC replaced the dingy dressing room seen here with a modern training facility called Trojan Hall. Lloyd filmed all of the football practice scenes from the freshmen beside Trojan Hall, which appears during this scene from Buster Keaton's College. Now long demolished, Trojan Hall was only a few months old when Lloyd started filming. This doorway leads to the Trojan Hall Trophy Room. Famed USC track coach Dean Cromwell poses at Trojan Hall with his team's 1925 IC4A Intercollegiate Championship trophy. USC tackle Norm Anderson posed with Harold for these photos taken at Bovard Field on December 23, 1924. The home with the narrow dormer windows behind Harold once stood west of Bovard Field on Hoover Street. It also appears behind Buster Keaton in College. For decades, a number of stately homes lined the street north of Bovard Field, including 823 West 34th Street, as shown here. The home even appears behind the Three Stooges in this publicity still for No Census, No Feeling, released in 1940. The USC campus grew surrounding the neighborhood, but the surviving home, known as College House, today plays host to the USC East Asian Studies Center. Bovard Field was kept as a practice field for decades until it was finally built over with modern campus buildings. Coincidentally, one of those buildings is the Harold Lloyd Motion Picture Soundstage, today part of the USC Thornton School of Music. Lloyd was a strong supporter and benefactor of USC. The Trojans played their final home game at Bovard Field on September 29, 1923. The following week, they began playing at their new home field, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Fueled by the college football craze, California witnessed the construction of 4 major stadiums during the early 1920s. Stanford Stadium opened in Palo Alto in 1921. followed by the Rose Bowl in Pasadena in 1922, and California Memorial Stadium in Berkeley, and the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, both in 1923. Lloyd created the freshman by blending footage shot at 3 of the 4 stadiums. Dedicated on May 1, 1923, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum would later host both the World Series and the Super Bowl, and is the only venue to host the Olympic Games twice. As seen here, the Coliseum stands only steps from where Harold was mobbed for free ice cream. This clip is the only wide stadium shot appearing in The Freshman that was filmed at the Coliseum. The remaining wide stadium views were all filmed at California Memorial Stadium in Berkeley. Lloyd also took a few rows of the Coliseum, shown roughly here, and crammed those seats with extras to film the scenes of Harold sitting on the bench. A 4-legged loudspeaker tower once stood at the east end of the Coliseum. The tower appearing here confirms that this shot of the field was filmed at the Coliseum. These production stills, taken inside the Coliseum, show the stadium at its original height. In 1930, the Coliseum was greatly expanded to prepare for the 1932 Olympic Games. The additional rows increased capacity from about 75,000 to over 100,000 people. Built in a natural amphitheater near Pasadena in 1922, the Rose Bowl was originally configured like an open horseshoe. UC Berkeley defeated USC in regular season play during the very first game held there in October 1922. Despite having a perfect season, Cal later declined its invitation to play in the stadium's inaugural Tournament of Roses game. So second-place USC stepped in, defeating Penn State 14-3 on January 1, 1923, the stadium's official dedication. The grandstand construction style and horseshoe gap evident in these photos show they were all staged at the Rose Bowl. That's co-director Fred Neumeier holding the megaphone. You can read his name on the chair. Lloyd began filming The Freshman by jumping straight to the climactic football game sequence, staged at the empty Rose Bowl. But Lloyd soon realized it was a mistake. Without understanding his character's motivation, the sequence just didn't work. So Lloyd scrapped the early scenes and filmed the movie in sequential order instead. He wore a white shirt when filming the game sequence the second time, so his character would stand out from the other players wearing black. In a nod to efficiency, Lloyd kept the production stills taken when he was wearing black. Thus, there are moments where Lloyd wears a white shirt in the movie and a black shirt in the matching photograph. A massive cement flagpole stood at the open end of the Rose Bowl until 1928, when bleachers closed off the south end of the stadium. The flagpole visible here confirms this scene was staged at the Rose Bowl. Lloyd filmed the various stadium scenes appearing in The Freshman at California Memorial Stadium in Berkeley during the November 22, 1924 big game between the University of California and Stanford University. Harold and his crew witnessed an exciting game as Stanford overcame a 14-point deficit in the final minutes to reach a 20-20 tie, capping an undefeated season for both teams. Nestled in the Berkeley foothills near Strawberry Canyon, California Memorial Stadium honors the many Californians who died in World War I. The stadium was completed in time to host the 1923 big game and sits adjacent to Tightwad Hill, where fans can gather to watch the games for free. These views show Cal Memorial Stadium looking north, with Tightwad Hill peering down over the field. Filming The Freshman at Cal Memorial Stadium was the first time Harold Lloyd had ever left Southern California to shoot a movie. Lloyd quickly shot these key scenes on the field during halftime. He later joked that he employed 90,000 extras to appear in his film. California Memorial Stadium directly straddles the active Hayward earthquake fault. Following recent seismic upgrades and renovations, the fully refurbished stadium reopened in 2012. Returning to Los Angeles, cheering fans carry Harold towards the athletic building that once stood south of the Coliseum. Jabina's love note to Harold was scribbled on an authentic football program. Holly Adams, pictured here, played center for USC. The stairwell visible inside the athletic building once led to an underground tunnel, providing athletes direct entry into the Coliseum. The film concludes as the other students, and even the coach, copy Harold's two-step greeting beside one of the many exit staircases leading down from the Coliseum. A perfect blend of comedy, romance, and meditation on football's pop culture origins, Harold Lloyd's influential smash hit, The Freshman, is both timeless and a priceless window into the past.